What's going on, guys? It's Trevor here from Financial Liberty 2020, and I'm coming at you with a new episode today on a stock called MicroStrategy that you're not going to want to miss out on for 2021. The potential for this stock for the next coming year is insane, and I wanted to bring it to your guys' attention so hopefully you guys can do your research and maybe buy into it as well. If you're new here, please consider subscribing as well as smash that like button for me. It really helps the channel and the YouTube algorithm. Now, without further ado, the stock we're going to talk about is MicroStrategy, ticker symbol MSTR. So first off, who is MicroStrategy and who is Michael Saylor, the CEO of MicroStrategy? Number two, why do we care? Why is this important? And finally, number three, what is my stock price prediction for MicroStrategy for 2021 and beyond? That's a big one. So first off, Michael Saylor, he's the CEO of MicroStrategy. He's been running MicroStrategy since 1989, where he founded it, and it's been primarily a software company focused on developing apps for businesses. After 2010, he started developing mobile apps. Before then, it was just computer applications, and in 1992, they had gained their first major client of McDonald's. That was a multi-million-dollar contract, as well as from the years 1990 to 1996, they saw revenue increase 100% or more every year. So that contributed to their stock price getting obliterated in March of 2000 due to the dot-com bubble. As you can see, it went from basically 3,000 to almost nothing. In one day, it actually fell 62%, so that's pretty crazy. Throughout that time, they developed many different apps. They sold Alarm.com. That was one of their largest companies that they had developed and sold. Made a lot of money off of that. Like I said, in 2010, they started designing mobile apps. 2011, they expanded into cloud-based services, which was big for them. In 2014, this isn't really that important, but it just kind of shows Michael Saylor's dedication to the company, and that he had a $875,000 salary that he cut down to $1 after he had to lay off so many of his employees, showing his dedication to his company, 2014 to 2021, MicroStrategy really focused on developing their own product called MicroStrategy, which is a business intelligence tool. It's basically for analytics as well as organization of different parts of your business, basically with mostly having to do with employees. In 2020, they came out with this feature called HyperIntelligence on MicroStrategy 2020. What this allows you to do is allows you to hover over different hyper-intelligized words or phrases, we'll say, and basically it will tell you different information regarding those. And this is easier to do than ever before with MicroStrategy's 2020 HyperIntelligence Analytics tool. So other features that are included within MicroStrategy 2020 are formatted reports, specials, and alerts, automated report distribution, the general business intelligence software side of things, that helps businesses get going. For small businesses as well as large businesses. MicroStrategy is actually the largest business intelligence company in the world. A lot of people don't know that. Now, finally, guys, we've reached the part where what they've done this year has changed their entire trajectory for the next decade and further. So in late 2020, MicroStrategy bought 70,000 Bitcoin. So they've done, I believe, 2 or more different debt equity offerings in order to dilute shareholder value in the short term, but they put all of this money into Bitcoin as well. So not only did they empty out their balance sheet into Bitcoin, but they've basically taken out, they basically printed money with their shares and bought more Bitcoin with that. Saylor's average price within MicroStrategy's platform of Bitcoin is sub 20,000, and we all know the current price is 32,000, 33,000, 34,000. Who knows where it's going to be on Monday? And this really makes you wonder. You don't know what you don't know. If we could have all known that Bitcoin was going to do this, we could have all known there was only 21 million Bitcoin back in the day, back in 2010. I mean, we all would have put our entire wallets back in there into Bitcoin back then, But it is what it is, and we have to play with what we have now. We have to invest in what we can see now that has value for the future. So this is just a little bit more. This shows MicroStrategy's development and business diversity across the globe. They're actually in every inhabitable continent on the earth. People use MicroStrategy for different businesses use. The business is profitable. Why do we care about MicroStrategy? Why is this important? Well, basically, every $1,000 gain in Bitcoin constitutes a $70 million gain in MicroStrategy's cash equivalents or cash on hand, essentially because of the price difference in Bitcoin, how much they own. So this gets me to the next question. This begs another question. So if MicroStrategy is doing this, who else is doing this? Who else finds value in Bitcoin so much they're willing to put so much of their money into Bitcoin, If they're the only people doing it, then why would I care? Why should you care, But here's the thing, is that they are not the only ones putting massive and I mean massive amounts of cash into Bitcoin. Check this out. Number one, Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. That's not surprising, you know, that people are going to start using that for 401k trusts, where you can buy Bitcoin with 401ks, or any type of different mutual funds that want to buy into Bitcoin. Generally, they're going to have to find some ETF or some sort of stock that they can buy instead of Bitcoin, because it's not necessarily considered a security, which they are bound to. So Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, GBTC, has, I mean, even though it trades at a premium of 20 to 30% of Bitcoin in of itself, there's a reason for it, and it's because it's so valuable in the fact that it's a security rather than just going out and buying straight Bitcoin from, let's say, Coinbase or Gemini or Webull or Robinhood or something like that. Number two, the Chinese government with 194,000 Bitcoin. Number three, Block One, that's a private company. Number four, Wrap BTC. Number five, MicroStrategy. 70 billion Bitcoins, averaged at $2.3 billion. They have the fifth most Bitcoin of any entity in the world. So people don't think that MicroStrategy is a Bitcoin play. Well, they're dead wrong. Because if Bitcoin goes to $1 million, I mean, MicroStrategy is going to be worth a lot, and I'll get to that here in a sec. They actually have more Bitcoin than the United States federal government, if you believe it or not. The United States federal government only has 69,000. So they've got about 1,000 more Bitcoin than the United States government. So if you're still here, you're the real MVP. Thank you for sticking to almost the end. Here is my price prediction for MicroStrategy 2021 and further. The current market cap for MicroStrategy is $3.6 billion. I just showed you up here that MicroStrategy's current value just in Bitcoin is $2.3 billion. So basically at this point, their company is valued at $1.3 billion, as well as their cash on hand is valued at what it is, as what it stands. So check this out, at $100,000 per Bitcoin, MicroStrategy is now worth $7 billion in Bitcoin alone. They're worth $7 billion in Bitcoin, let alone any of their business operations worldwide. Their worldwide business operations don't even factor into that 7 billion. So that's, I mean, you're looking at 3.6 compared to 7 billion right there. So you can already see a double X just in their Bitcoin appreciation. And that should reflect in their stock price. So why is this so important? Well, Michael Saylor, he has gotten all over the internet. He's gotten so much publicity over this stunt where he put his entire, their balance sheet into Bitcoin. This is the first time we've ever seen this, that a publicly traded company has put its entire balance sheet and more. They actually took out debt equity offerings to buy more, and now at this point he's made north of $500 million in Bitcoin in the last couple months, let alone the publicity that his company has received from all of the time that he spent on social media and all these other different platforms on the news to promote Bitcoin and to promote his ideas. So what I'm saying is that I think that there's likely a horde of investors coming after Michael Saylor. There already has been, but I believe that there's a horde still coming. Even at $33,000 to $34,000 in Bitcoin, it's still undervalued. I think a lot of people will say the same thing. I personally will be continuing to buy Bitcoin for the next year at least. I mean, we'll see what happens, but I will personally continue to buy Bitcoin as well as MicroStrategy stock. At $1 million per Bitcoin, MicroStrategy is now worth $70 billion. Strictly in Bitcoin. That has nothing to do with business operations, no publicity, nothing. People are going to start revering this Michael Saylor guy, and they're going to start copying his ways of putting companies' balance sheets in Bitcoin if this works out well. I mean, we're not that far away from, you know, companies now being regarded as not intelligent if they don't buy Bitcoin. At this point, people question if your company does buy Bitcoin, but if Bitcoin continues to rise the same way it has for the past year, for the past 10 years, honestly, well, we'll see a lot more companies do this, and Michael Saylor will be revered, and who knows where he can then develop his MicroStrategy platform over the next decade. He's got all this, tons of cash on hand. He says he's not going to sell a single Satoshi for 100 years. Well, we'll see what happens. Maybe he's got some other sort of way of making a lot of capital and being able to use that to expand his business operations, because I think that there is something further behind this than just the Bitcoin. I think that there's a lot of Bitcoin. I think the main reason he bought the Bitcoin was just for the sheer appreciation, but he's been so vocal about it that I feel there's something else behind it as well. So, at $1 million per Bitcoin, you've got Apple, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Amazon, the 5 biggest tech companies in the world. This is their balance sheets, how much money they have on their balance sheets right now: 193 billion, 137 billion, 118 billion, 60.3 billion, and 50 billion, respectively. So, if you've got $70 billion in MicroStrategy stock, just from Bitcoin going to $1 million per coin, you are now sitting between Google and Facebook as far as cash on hand, and that is, you can do a lot of damage with $70 billion. Imagine how they could expand business operations with that if they were to sell or buy or do something, with their Bitcoin that they have, to expand. So at $1,000 per Bitcoin, so at $100,000 per Bitcoin, I see MicroStrategy being worth $1,300 to $1,600 per share. At $500,000 per one Bitcoin, I believe that MicroStrategy will be worth between $8,500 and $9,500 per share. Now this is huge because this is trading at a premium to what Bitcoin trades. Basically what I'm saying is that if Bitcoin does get to 500,000, I believe that on a percentage basis, MicroStrategy will go higher than Bitcoin will. It will trade with respect to Bitcoin higher than Bitcoin does. So, and one thing about MicroStrategy is that it's a stock, so technically you could buy call options if you were really that bullish in the next couple years on MicroStrategy or really on Bitcoin. If you think Bitcoin is going nuts over the next couple years, I mean, call options are out there for different, scenarios like this, where, I mean, people have already seen Bitcoin rise a lot, but if you can find a way to get a call option on MicroStrategy or another stock that you find that can follow Bitcoin and that the options are not extremely overpriced at this point, I would say maybe take a shot at it, don't throw your whole account into it, but call options on Bitcoin appreciation, call options that follow Bitcoin appreciation over the next year, 2 years, might be literally life-changing, so just it's worth a thought. At $1 million per Bitcoin, MicroStrategy is worth $20,000 plus. I mean, I don't see on what planet it's not worth $20,000 plus per share, and that's not saying that it splits whatsoever. So, yeah, this is a big one. So just as a little side note, guys, Yale University does recommend at least 6% diversification into cryptocurrency in your investment portfolio. So it's not just me, it's not just YouTubers talking about Bitcoin, it's not just commercials, it's the big dogs too. It's Yale University, Harvard, the most educated people in the world. As a little added note to this presentation, I was going to tell you guys why I think Bitcoin will continue to rise over time. Number one is that it's a digital asset. It's essentially digital gold. There's only 21 million Bitcoin in the whole world, and there will only ever be 21 million. There will never be 21 million and one or 21 million and two. You can never dilute this market share, even if you wanted to, because it's decentralized. It's not ran by the U.S. government. It's ran by no one, essentially. There's just a market full of Bitcoins, and the value is what you make of it, because we don't know who Satoshi is. So if we did know who Satoshi was, maybe we could decide, we could have our own decisions about Bitcoin based upon other things that he's said. But because Satoshi never revealed himself, now we cannot ever associate him and his actions elsewhere in life with Bitcoin itself. So Bitcoin is its own entity. At the end of the day, this is the reason why people don't like it, but the reason why it's so critical, but the main reason it's so important is that Bitcoin is what you make of it. At the end of the day, Bitcoin is what you make of it, because if you ask me, it's a byproduct of the internet, but it's like Facebook. A lot of people didn't like it in the beginning. MySpace, people didn't like it in the beginning. They didn't understand it. Bitcoin is a byproduct of the internet that allows for decentralized currency that deflates rather than inflates. Over time, your Bitcoin will be worth more as compared to the US dollar. Over time, it's worth much, much, much less. 25% of the world's currency was printed this year. So keeping all that in mind, why wouldn't Bitcoin go up? Why wouldn't Bitcoin, as soon as something is recognizable as a cryptocurrency, and that is a store of value, it's going up forever. It just has to be recognized, in my personal opinion. So liquidity was super low when Bitcoin wasn't worth much from 2008 to 2015. Then we saw what happened in 2017 when it exploded, and then it crashed back down because people didn't understand what it was. Then 2020 came, institutional money flew into Bitcoin around 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, and it's still flying in if you believe it. It's pretty crazy, even over, even the thousands of % gain that Bitcoin had over 2020, people are still flying money into Bitcoin. So I think it's pretty obvious that Bitcoin is low respective to where it's going to be in the next 2, 3, 1, in the next 1, 2, 3, 5 years, 10 years down the road. I think it's very low compared to what we will see soon. In 2021, we'll likely have a lot more stimulus and more printing of fiat currency, which will affect Bitcoin in the long and short-term future. Bitcoin is essentially a hedge against printing money. Now, a lot of these investors that are hopping into Bitcoin, don't see it as a hedge. They see it as digital gold, and that it is what it is. It will appreciate over time the same way as gold has, probably even faster and better, because in basically every single way, Bitcoin is better than gold. Number 3 is that big companies have been born due to inception of Bitcoin. This is one of the craziest things I've ever seen. Square, one of the biggest platforms, is based upon Bitcoin. They buy Bitcoin and then they sell it, and then they do everything that you would want a bank to do that they don't. You can't buy Bitcoin at a bank. You can't even buy stocks with your bank account, even your online bank account. You can't do that stuff, right? So, not just them. You've also got different kinds of miners. You've got Riot Blockchain, you've got Mara. You've got these different places that they mine Bitcoin. They do all these super highly advanced mathematical computations, and they get paid in Bitcoin through the Bitcoin network for doing it. So with that being said, all of these Bitcoin miners, they mine the Bitcoin, so they get that, and then when Bitcoin appreciates, they get even more money. They're worth even more, you know? So be on the lookout for those. And then also you've got tons of Bitcoin commercials already coming out. eToro, I believe, is something that I've seen like 10 different times. Coinbase has gotten more prevalent in advertising. When you can get to the masses in advertising, then you can change the world, and that's what these people are doing. They basically created different platforms. They've created different ways of making money from Bitcoin itself, rather than just buying it, as well as probably just buying it, you know? So we've got all these different factors playing into Bitcoin, and why, if you jump on the train now, it's probably a good thing, you know? At least do your research and then come to an educated opinion on whether you want to put your hard-earned money into Bitcoin or not. I'm going to, but I'm not a financial advisor. So with that, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed my content. If you did, make sure to smash that subscribe button and smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm, and have a good week.